hands together and celebrate the God of miracles, what he did this past Easter. We can't thank him enough. Man, 4,000 people, almost 300 gave their lives to Jesus. We are knocking on the door of something greater here at Bethel, and it's because of the God of the resurrection. And don't forget, he's also the God who resurrects. He wants to raise up the things that are broken in each and every one of our lives. So we want to celebrate him. I want to just thank again our volunteers who served last weekend. Weekends like this historic Easter weekend don't happen without our volunteers and our leaders here at Bethel. I want to thank everyone who shifted. I want to thank the 900 people who ate chicken sandwiches at the 5 p.m. service. That is a record in and of itself. It was just an amazing weekend. And of course, for all of you who give here at Bethel, you give to our mission, and we're inviting everyone, and we mean everyone, to experience God's best. And so today we're kicking off a brand new series called How to Get What You Really Want. How to Get What You Really Want. And this series is all about what we ought to really want. And I want you to begin thinking this morning about, what do you want? What do you want? Every single one of us in this auditorium wants something. Some of us have a list of things that we want. What do you want? What do you want for your relationships? What do you want today for your marriage or your dating life? What do you want in regards to your finances? What do you want? What do you want with your health or at work? Maybe some of you want a promotion today. What do you want? We want to begin exploring that question of what you and I want today. But the title for today's message is Careful What You Want For. And I want to land here today. I want us to, as we think about what we want, we need to be extremely careful. And we're going to look at a passage today that warns us about how complicated wants are in our hearts and in our minds. What do you want? You know, I don't know what you did this weekend, but unfortunately, and I say this because I'm not very talented at this, I spent the entire weekend working on things at our house. And I'm so thankful for talented guy friends. One of my buddies from Bethel, Edgar, came over, and he's been helping me paint and spackle and do all kinds of little handyman work around the house. I kind of just hand him the tools, if you know what I mean. And he was working. I go in a room, I say, hey, Edgar, can you paint this bedroom for me, my two of my sons' bedroom? Can you just repaint this? Just needs a fresh coat of paint. Well, he came to me yesterday about 10:30 in the morning, and Edgar said, I stopped counting at 59 holes that I've spackled in the boys' rooms. And I looked at my 10-year-old son, Noah, and he just shrugged his shoulders and went, brothers, Dad. There's something about brothers. You know, my younger brother and his wife, Hannah, they just had their first baby this week. So beautiful little baby boy. But there's something about brothers. If you grew up with brothers, you know it's a unique experience. And we want to look at a passage today by James, the brother of Jesus. Now, could you imagine what it must have been like to be Jesus' brother? I mean, it was awesome, but it had to be tough sometimes. Imagine sharing a room with Jesus or competing with Jesus. I mean, it had to be an experience. And James, we're going to look at James chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, and we're going to stay here today for this message to be careful what we want for. James says this, the brother of Jesus, he says, what is causing the quarrels and the fights among you? What's causing the conflict among you, James says? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you do not have, so you scheme and you kill to get it, James says. You are jealous of what others have, and you can't get it, so you fight, you even wage war to take it from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask God, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong, and you want only what will give you pleasure. I want to ask you today, what do you want? You know you've got something in your heart today, something you've been wanting for, something you've been thinking about. Maybe for some of you, you've been pursuing it. This whole idea of what we want, it's a complicated one. I don't know everything about what you want, whether it's relationships, whether it's related to your job, whether it's related to your education or your health or your finances or your spiritual life. But I know this, that all of us in this room want something, and my question is, what do you want? What do you want? I don't know what that is, but I know one thing that you want. You want it your way. You want it your way. You want it your way. Turn to your neighbor and say, have it your way. That's the old Burger King slogan, right? Have it your way, right? You want it your way. But the thing about having it your way is when you get it your way, don't you oftentimes get in your own way? I mean, we do. I am the king of having it my way. I want it my way in my house. I want it my way around here. I want it my way. But when I have it my way, more oftentimes than not, I get in my own way. I end up hurting the people around me. I end up with consequences that I didn't bargain for. I get it my way, and man, do I get in my own way. We've got to be so careful about getting our own way, because when we do that, we get in our own way. See, we can't have our own way, and we can't have it too. It doesn't work that way. We've got to be careful what we want for. I know another thing you want. You want what you want, right? You want to do what you want to do. You know what you want. You know what you want to do. And you want to do what you want to do. But catch this today, and this is the heart of the message, that we need to be careful what we want for. When we do what we want to do, more oftentimes than not, we end up in a place we never wanted to be. When you and I do exactly what we want to do, and we pursue the things we want to pursue, and we go after the desires of our hearts, when we do what we want to do, we end up in places we never wanted to be. Think about relationships that you wanted in your life, that you had to have that guy, or you had to have that girl. You had to have that experience. You wanted to go out that Friday night, and you wanted to do what you wanted to do, and as a result, you ended up in a circumstance, you ended up in a place you never wanted to be. The ultimate illustration of this is our men and women who are incarcerated in prison right now. And as pastors at Bethel, we have many responsibilities, but one of the things that we do often is we visit people in prison. I've never met a man or woman in prison who didn't do what they wanted to do, and they ended up in that place because they got what they wanted, and they never wanted to be there. See, when you do what you want to do, you end up in places you never wanted to be. I think of it this way with my kids. Kids will bug the heck out of you, right? Dad, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? And I get tired of telling them the house rules. And so eventually, after I say, no, you can't do that, son. No, Jenna, you can't do that. No, Hanleys don't partake in that kind of activity. Eventually, I get to the point where I talk to my kids and I say, you know what? You can do what you want to do. But if you do that, you're going to end up in your room. If you do that, you're going to end up grounded for the next week. If you do that, you won't have a snack again until you can ever think of. See, you and I have freedom. God has given us freedom to do what we want to do. But when we do what we want to do, we may end up in places and situations we never wanted to be. Be careful doing what you want to do. I know something else that you and I want. You want pleasure, don't you? You want pleasure. You want pleasure. You want perpetual, ongoing satisfaction and pleasure. And I don't know about you, but the first thing I think of is the same thing you think of when we think about pleasure, right? It's chocolate. No, right? You're thinking the same thing I am, right? We want pleasure. I don't care if the pleasure is what you want to eat today. I don't care if the pleasure involves dollars and what your bank account looks like, or what your credit card statement looks like. We want pleasure. We want to feel good. Some of us, it's sex. It's another relationship. It's a person. It's someone you've been thinking about. Some of you are fixated on someone right now this week. You want what you want. We want pleasure. But this is the thing about pleasure. We need to be careful what we want for, because pleasure, oftentimes, when we enter into pleasure's not bad. But when we enter into pleasure often becomes addiction, doesn't it? And when pleasure becomes addiction undermines the pleasure, and it's no longer pleasurable. Come on, somebody. I want to have 2 beers after work because I grew up watching my dad have 2 beers after work, and my granddad had 2 beers after work, and that's just pleasure. I mean, you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, you should be able to go home and pop open a few brewskis. But 2 beers becomes 4 beers, and 4 beers becomes 6 beers, and 6 beers becomes more than you can count. And all of a sudden, that simple pleasure that you thought you were able to have becomes an addiction, and the addiction undermines the pleasure. And you can look at any drunk person or any person addicted to drugs, and I can tell you, once they're in that state, they never wanted to be there. They didn't start to get that way. They started to just have 1 or 2 or 1 hit, or I just want a little bit of pleasure. But pleasure becomes addiction, and addiction undermines the pleasure. Same thing's true with sex. Same thing's true with the pursuit of money. You name it, you can want it, you can want the pleasure, but if you enter into the pleasure too far, it becomes an addiction, and addiction always undermines pleasure. What do you want for? What do you want today? I know something else we all want. We want it now. We want it now, don't we? I mean, I can't wait. I've got to have it now. I need the money now. I need the relationship now. I need to break into that circle of friends now. I need it now. I need a breakthrough now. But when we get it now, realize that when we get what we want now, we may not have what we want later. When we get what we want now, we take it now, we may not end up with what we really wanted later. Now, I don't need to go too far. Anyone been to a high school reunion? Man, she was so hot. Man, if I could just be with her, I mean, this is going to be life-changing. We're going to be like Angelina, and Brad Pitt. It's going to be crazy, right? And then fast forward 10, 15 years later, wow. I'm glad you're so successful in your field. You've really matured. Right? Time has a way of changing things. Be careful what you want for. We want it now, but when we get it now, we can undermine what we truly want later. This is what regret is, right? Regret always begins with, I want. I want the girl, I want the guy, I want the sex. I want the experience. I want to go out and just have a few drinks tonight. I want it. I want to go out and have a night on the town. I want it. I want the promotion. I'm going to do whatever it takes to beat out my colleagues for that promotion because I want it, and I want it now. Regret begins with the words and the feeling and the attitude, I want. I have a desire, and it needs to be fulfilled. But regret always ends with the idea of, I wish I could go back 10 years. I wish I could go back to last year. I wish I could go back to my performance review or what I said in that meeting. I wish I could go back to that decision I made about my finances. I wish I could go back and not get what I wanted. Isn't that right? We all have things in life we wish we could go back and change. That moment began with what you wanted, and it ends now with you saying, I wish I could go back and make a different decision. Be careful what you want for. See, if we get what we want now, we may not get what we want later. We've got to be careful, and my question today for you and for this series is, what do you want? What do you want? Again, as we look at the passage, James says it this way. He says, what is causing the quarrels and the fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires that war within you? What's causing the conflict in your life and in my life, in other words? Well, it's what we want. See, this whole idea of what we want, it's a mind boggler. Because some of us, we're frustrated because we don't have what we want. You don't have the dollars. You don't have the girl. You don't have the what you want. And you are frustrated. You are angry. Some of you are bitter because you don't have or you haven't gotten what you want yet. And then the other side of the room, some of us, and I'll just tell you, in the last 7 years of my life, 10 years, Kelly and I are extremely blessed in so many ways. But I can also tell you, in a number of different circumstances, the amount of times that we got exactly what we wanted, and then we no longer wanted what we had. See, some of you are frustrated, James says, because you get what you want, but you don't have what you want. This is such a complicated deal. He goes on to say, you want what you don't have, so you scheme and you kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it from them. In other words, he's not saying literally that we kill people, although sometimes people want something so badly that they do kill for it, don't they? But for most of us, this is hyperbole, or just the use of language in the Bible that James uses. He's saying you and I will do whatever it takes oftentimes to get what we want. You want it that bad. You want that guy or that girl that bad. You want that promotion that bad. You want that job that bad. You want people to think about you a certain way that bad, and you will do whatever it takes. You will lie, cheat, steal, kill to get what you want. We need to be careful what we want for. He says we'll even fight, we'll wage war, we'll fight with people, we'll break relationships to get what we want. And then he says you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong and you only want what will give you pleasure. See, we want what we want. We want what we want, and we don't get it oftentimes, God says, because our motives, the way that we ask, the reasons that we ask, we get it all wrong. And some of you are here today and you're frustrated. You've been praying for what you want. You've been praying for something in your family, praying for something in your relationships, praying for something in your marriage, praying for breakthrough in your health or your finances. And you're like, God, why won't you give me what I want? Do you ever think about the fact that God might be saving you from the consequence of what you might get if you get what you want? See, what is James saying? This whole deal about getting what we want, it's complicated. It's complicated. And getting what we want, as we mentioned earlier, often takes us to a place we never wanted to be. So we need to be careful what we want for. Not getting what we want, James says, creates conflict. And have you ever noticed that the world we live in, the culture, the society, whether you watch MSNBC or CNN or Fox News, whatever your poison is, TV and internet and media has a way of telling us exactly what we should want, don't they? I mean, we are inundated, and if you think, I'm 41 years old this week, if you think we're inundated as adults by being told about what we should want, our kids are really being told what they should want. The world will tell you what you ought to want. It's easy for my marketing people who are here this morning. It's easy for the marketing world to tell us what we should want. But you know what's a lot harder to learn? And what you'll never hear on TV and you'll rarely ever hear on the radio or surfing the internet and the web, what you'll never hear is how to get what you really want. What you really want and learning about what you really should want is something the media won't tell you about, marketing won't change. It's a lot less tangible, but how to get what we really want, and this is why the series is called How to Get What You Really Want, is where Jesus stayed in all of his teaching. This is why Jesus said, what good is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul? So you can get exactly what you want and hate what you have. Regret where you've ended up. This is where we're going to land throughout the rest of this series. It's about how to get what we really want, not what we want. What we want is shallow, and wants aren't bad inherently. It's not evil to want things. But if we just keep pursuing what we want, we will end up in a place we never wanted to be. Jesus is going to point us to a different direction. He's going to point us towards a totally different teaching and a different realm and show us how to get what we really want. See, this is a realm we rarely explore. Some of you are frustrated. You've been asking God for the things that you want for. You've been telling God about what you want. You wonder why God hasn't answered your prayers. Others have received exactly what you asked for, and you're frustrated and angry about what you have now. Getting what we want is complicated. But if you're frustrated that you don't understand what you really want, realize the reason God won't give you what you want is because you haven't yet discovered what you really want. And the only way that we find out, and this is where we're going the next few weeks, the only way that we can figure out what you and I really want is to understand what we really value. It's about value. It's not just about the surface. It's not just about the right guy or the right girl or the right marriage or the picture-perfect family. It's not about the number in your bank account or whether or not you have a diagnosis from a doctor. It's about something deeper. It's about something more core. It's about something you were created for, about a destiny that God wrote for you before you ever were created in your mother's womb. It's about value. This is where we're headed. This week, as you pray, as you spend time with God, as you think about life, I want you to think not only about what you want, but what you really want. Will you pray with me? Father, we thank you for your warning from your brother Jesus, from your brother James, warning us that we should be careful what we want for. Father, I pray that you would help us to guard our hearts, to guard our minds, and to be careful about what we want. But God, beginning this week, that we would pursue what we really value, that we would pursue what we really want. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Will you stand with me?